Hey everyone, it's Urenten here with a brand new video focusing on the Nintendo Switch game ARMS that released in 2017. And if everything goes to plan, this video is coming out exactly 9 years since that game released. Yeah, it has been a long time. For those of you who don't know, I have actually played ARMS competitively when the game first launched, and I actually ended up becoming the best ninjara in the entirety of North America. I actually placed 9th at the biggest ARMS tournament of all time. Of course, that's online. I also placed 9th at the October Nintendo Online as well. So that was interesting. And I don't want to go into specifics for the October one because it got kind of scuffed at the end with Nintendo messing up the brackets twice. But I'm not going to say that that killed my momentum, but it did. But I still managed to make a comeback and come back to 9th after that whole thing. Now, one thing I really have been interested in when it comes to ARMS has always been the stages. Every single character in this game has a stage that is specifically built for them or that is considered their home stage. And with that, you have to keep in mind, this game isn't just a competitive game. It is also a game that can be played and has been played casually for an extremely long time, longer than it's been being played competitive, depending on who you ask. This game is very, it goes both ways. It can be competitive, it can be casual, so you have stages that appeal to competitive players and stages that will appeal to more casual players. And for this, I will say that I don't feel like ARMS has ever had a really good stage list. I feel like what I will say is that our current stage list, one, has too many stages, and two, it has a problem that I really and truly want to address. So, today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going through every single stage, researching them, getting as much data as I possibly can, and then coming to a conclusion after this data. I am recording this intro before I have done any research whatsoever, and I'm going to tell you whether or not my conclusion right now will be what my conclusion is at the end. Now, I believe that our stage list is hot garbage. I'll be honest with you, I think it's really bad. I believe that the old stage list is way better, but at the same time, could be better. So what I'm going to try to do is explain why each stage should be competitive, can be competitive, explain why it is, better, and then try to come up with my own 7 to 8 stage list for competitive. Now, before I really get into the research, I need to have a nice set of categories to make things a little simpler, make things a little easier for everyone to understand. And for stages to be competitive, you have to think about them in very specific ways. Competitive just means fair. That means that no one should have an obscene advantage just based entirely off of the stage. Like, it could be based off of the characteristics that the character holds on the stage, but the stage itself should be fair to everyone that is on it. And that is one thing. One of these things that is very important is symmetry. Symmetry is important. If a stage doesn't have symmetry, then it's very likely not going to be good competitively, as that means, depending on how the stage layout is, someone is going to end up being in an unfair position. The gimmick. Gimmicks can make or break a stage. If a gimmick absolutely is overpowered and it is very difficult to come back from a gimmick, then that stage most definitely is not going to be competitively viable. But if a gimmick does not hinder or hurt the experience and can, in some instances, enhance the experience, then that gimmick does not affect the stage's viability, and in fact can even be a boon for it and make it more competitively viable. Size is important. You can't just have really big stages or really small stages. Size is very important, especially on a game like ARMS where mid-range, close range, and far range is very important. Everything is important there, and with ARMS you also have to consider, because it's in a 3D space, elevation. This is what a lot of people do not consider when it comes to this game sometimes, but elevation can make or break a stage. A stage can be perfectly symmetrical, have a very good gimmick, pretty good size, but that elevation just makes it, oh my god. So elevation is something that will make or break a stage. And then we have to look at the type of stage this is. I want to give a quick shout out before I even get really deep into this. This is just the intro. This is going to be a big video, I'm telling you right now. I want to give a big shout out to those folks at Casual Arms, Rashiko, Lit, Emperor, Oddity, Programmability, Sora, everyone else who gave some sort of opinion here that helped me come up with this last one, which is type. This was the one I was struggling with for the longest to find a proper definition for. Because there's so many different ways for these stages to work that labeling them a specific type can be hard, because some stages can even be more than one type depending on how you look at it. So the types that finally we locked it down to for the research purposes are confined, open, obstructed, and dynamic. These 4 types are going to be what the stages will fall under, and from there we will come to our conclusions, do our research, and figure out whether or not we can create a perfectly good stage list, and also whether or not me calling out the current stage list for being bad is true or not. And I don't think my opinion on that's going to change. I think the current stage list is going to still be bad, but I feel like the conclusion of the perfect stage list, I don't think that exists. But let's find out as we go into our very first stage, Spring Stadium. Spring Stadium is the home of Springman, who made it into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as an assist trophy, and this stage is one of the first stages players were introduced to when the game was first announced in 2017. Spring Stadium is a small, symmetrical stage that is square-shaped with trampolines all around the outer edges. Players can fight on the trampolines, try to use them to escape, and even use them for combos. The Yabuki, a combo named after the director of ARMS, was first on here when Kosuke Yabuki grabbed an opponent with Min Min, threw them into the trampoline, confirmed that into Min Min's rush, and secured the game. Spring Stadium is a simple stage design-wise, with its gimmick of springs on the edges of the stage. Both can leave you cornered and give you a potential chance to escape by using them, though this is at a risk of one of the biggest factors of lag in this game, which is your end lag when you jump. Landing lag is very bad, it is very painful sometimes, it'll catch you off guard, it is a bit longer than you think it is, and this stage and trampolines in general leave you very open to it. This stage is confined. It is small, it is confined, it is box-like, it is a square, you are boxed in. There are corners everywhere. This is a confined, small, cornering stage. You put your opponent in a corner and you beat them. Or they put you in a corner and they try to beat you, you try to escape. There's multiple ways to go about it or look at it. This is also where the gimmick of the trampolines on the edges can come into play, where you can use them to try to escape, or potentially use them, try to escape, think you've escaped, get hit by that landing lag, and then get punished anyway. Yeah, confined stages are it's very hard if you're someone like me who likes to run away hit, and doesn't particularly shift into a more aggressive style unless necessary, where cornering someone will be important. This is a stage that benefits a character like a Min Min, a Max Brass, Kid Cobra, characters that want to get you in a corner and keep you there, and has the tools to do so, whereas someone like me, who Ninjara does have the ability to do everything, I play more of a runaway style, so that doesn't really help me in particular. The only real elevation on this stage comes from the trampolines. They're a little higher, and when you jump off them, you get really high, which can be very awkward to hit. But again, as the opponent on the ground, as long as you're waiting patiently and paying attention, you can avoid grabs, you can avoid punches, and they have to land. And if they land very much unsafely, which it is most likely going to be on the land, you can punish it very heavily. Trampoline use has been something that I personally have tried to avoid for a while, and I find it to be very risky to use it. So, what does that mean for Spring Stadium when it comes to being a legal stage? Well, As I said earlier, Spring Stadium is symmetrical. The gimmick is the trampolines on the side, which I think actually enhanced the stage quite a bit. As being caught in a corner with nothing else to do is very dangerous. It is, quite frankly, one of the worst positions to possibly be in, and your escape options are so limited, so the trampolines give you the potential to escape. Even if it does potentially give you end lag, it still gives you ways to fight back. You can land a grab in mid-air to catch your opponent off guard. You can land punches in mid-air to catch your opponent off guard. You can literally jump on the trampoline, land back on the trampoline to jump again. You can use your jump dash. There's multiple ways to use the trampolines to your advantage. It adds a nice, good element and a good way to avoid things. It also lends you towards combos. I am not the biggest fan of combos, but the combos in ARMS are fine. These ones, you can, get an extra 20% of damage after someone bounces on the trampoline after you hit them on it. You can confirm into your rushes off of that. There's so many things you can do with the trampolines. You can grab someone, rush on the Ibuki combo. There's a lot of things you can do depending on how the character's grab is and how a lot of stuff works out. So, all in all of that to say, Spring Stadium is the first stage, and we're going to categorize this stage as a legal, small, confined stage. We can now look at our second stage, which is going to be Ribbon Ring. Ribbon Ring is the home of Ribbon Girl, who was one of the first two characters revealed in the reveal trailer for ARMS in 2017. This stage is a large rectangular stage featuring blocks that rise out of the ground that can be punched through, jumped on. When playing with items on, certain blocks will contain items when you hit them, and when you are playing with items off, these blocks can still appear, but they will be solid blocks that will block your arms from punching through the remainder of the blocks. These blocks can also be used to obscure your opponent or your own view, making it possible for you or your opponent to sneak in attacks using these blocks, making it very hard for you to react to some of these hits that come through. For example, a Tri-Blast, a very fast arm, can be snuck through these blocks when your opponent is unable to see, leading to you scoring a very quick hit as a Tri-Blast. It is very hard to react to a Tri-Blast if you're not ready, if you're not seeing it come out. So this can also be one of the advantages or disadvantages to Ribbon Ring. A large stage like this benefits faster characters that like to hit and run, or more evasive characters as well. It favors characters such as Ninjara, or even characters that love to use elevation to their advantage, such as Bite and Bark. And while getting cornered is possible on this stage, with the amount of space that the stage provides, in theory, that wouldn't be a problem. However, the gimmick being blocks that come up out of the ground can body block players, preventing them from dashing to the sides or backwards, which can lead to them getting cornered while being in the center of the stage. The dynamic nature of this stage adds a random element to the stage which can either hinder or help your opponent depending on how the blocks form. So, with that being said, what is my conclusion when it comes to Ribbon Ring? Well, Ribbon Ring is a stage that has had some scrutiny due to how the gimmick can affect the flow of battle, especially with the blocks hindering movement and even hindering attacks. I know this through experience. This is something that has definitely bothered me and hurt me a lot. I have lost games upon sets to blocks blocking me. As a Ninjara main and as a Ninjara player, I love to move. I love to abuse my speed. I love to dash around. I love to hit and run. I love to be able to get in, get out, and this stage provides me with ample space to do so. And then the blocks just body block me and I get hit and I just get upset because, oh my god, this stage. So, I personally dislike this stage. However, it does fit my playstyle very well. So, with all of that being said, I think Ribbon Ring lands in the potential legal stage. The reason why I say this is that it is symmetrical, but its gimmick can be tedious, annoying, and can provide advantages and disadvantages similar to the moving platforms on Town and City, and the fact that it also provides elevation, which can definitely make or break a game, is also something to consider, even though, in this case, the elevation can be removed by punching through the blocks. The dynamic nature of this stage, I feel, is the one thing that is really and truly holding it back from being a perfectly good legal stage. However, overall, do I think this stage can be used legally? Yes, it can. It is a large open space, even with the dynamic nature of the stage. So, without further ado, Ramen Ring can be categorized as a large, dynamic, legal stage. That is one of the most important types of stages you can have, specifically a large stage, because as we will go through more and more, you'll seem to realize that a lot of issues appear with some of the other larger stages. But for now, this is where Ramen Ring lands, and we'll keep track of all of these stages and where they land, and then we'll take the time at the end to pull from where they've all landed and make that definitive stage list, if that stage list is possible. So, with all that said, it's time to move on to our third stage in the list. We've now arrived at the home of my main ninjara, Ninja College. Now this stage is just a very simple one. A long stairway leading up or down depending on where you're starting. At the bottom, you're going up. At the top, you're coming down. Due to this long stairway, this stage is a fairly large and features heavy elevation, which can drastically affect how a match plays out. It can be said that due to the elevation, that one player will always have an advantage over the other. Due to how narrow the stage is, it is also fairly easy to corner an opponent, leaving them pretty much vulnerable to the more aggressive playstyles of a Max Brass or a Min Min. And it doesn't help that the stage is so long. Now these characters that have these powered up states, such as, again, Min Min and Max Brass, can take their time, acquire their powered up state, and then approach their opponent. On the other hand, it is also a fairly large stage, which allows longer ranged opponents to keep those very scary powered up states away, make it difficult for them to maintain it, and just play a very good keep away game. However, if the powered up state even gets close to you once, gets in there, it is extremely hard to escape due to how small and narrow the stage is. While the stage is large and there's a lot of space to work with, there isn't much ways to maneuver around opponents, meaning you are trapped on your side. Meaning if you have the high elevation, you have the high elevation, you have the low elevation, you have the low elevation. Of course, you can always find ways to go around, but more than likely or not, you will be trapped in whatever corner, whatever stage, especially if you're trying to play keep away, you're most likely going to get cornered with how this stage plays. So, what is my conclusion when it comes to Ninja College? Well, the stage is not symmetrical. It is a one way up, one way down. It's no way where you start, you have the same advantage as the other. Someone has an advantage. Someone has the high ground, someone has the low ground, someone has an advantage every single time you start. That affects the game heavily. Elevation is one of the most overlooked important aspects of ARMS. So having a stage where you're always at an advantage or disadvantage is actually really, really bad. So for that reason, this is without a doubt the very first illegal stage for competitive play that we have found. Ninja College is a large, confined, illegal stage. We now enter the haunted stage. The stage with the creepy crawlies and the spooky wookies. The Mausoleum, which is home to the very first heavy character introduced into the game, Master Mummy. Mausoleum is a circular, medium-sized stage that has a middle that can be broken, and when that middle is broken, a trampoline is exposed, which can be used to quickly cross the stage or you are just denied from crossing and you get punished for it. It puts you in the air. As I've stated before, being in the air is not your friend a lot of the time, so it is a very interesting stage. Due to the design of this stage, this is what I personally consider the true neutral stage of ARMS. At least before the trampoline is exposed. It is circular, meaning it is harder to corner an opponent, yet it is possible to do so. It is fairly large, but not too large, allowing players to both scrap if they want to, or maintain a good distance, a medium-sized distance, or even maintain a large distance and prefer to fight further away. Then you can do just that. This stage, without the trampoline exposed, allows for every single playstyle that exists in this game to thrive in some way, shape, or form. However, due to the trampoline being exposed when enough damage is dealt to it, the stage can quickly slow to a halt and favor players that are less aggressive or those who prefer to play at a distance, especially those that prefer to play at a further away distance, a longer distance. Attempting to cross this trampoline is dangerous, as I've stated before, as your defensive options are extremely limited when you're in the air, when you're bouncing on trampolines. So while you might be able to get more offensive at times, if your attacks are easily dodged, which they will be on a trampoline in this game, you'll more than likely be punished for that, and you'll probably be taking heavy damage depending on who you're playing. So the trampoline allows you to, get over, but it is a very risky thing, especially if the opponent has rush. You can't shield. You're just a sitting duck for that rush. It is a very interesting centerpiece. That is putting it lightly. However, if you and your opponent are both trapped on the same side of the trampoline, then it can be a little harder for the opponent to escape, as your more aggressive style is going to be a little harder. There's less space to work with due to the trampoline being broken. So again, even with the trampoline exposed, it can still benefit those who have more aggressive playstyles as well. So with that said, what is my conclusion on Mausoleum? Well, I believe I said it earlier with me considering it a true neutral stage. This is a symmetrical medium-sized stage with a large trampoline in the middle that may or may not be exposed. It features little to no elevation unless that trampoline is exposed, and it favors all types of playstyle, whether the trampoline is exposed or not to some degree. Though when it is exposed, it more heavily favors the players that try to move more slowly, less aggressive, try to prefer to play at a range. Those are the players that will benefit more. However, if you're both on the same side, then the players that prefer to fight up close and personal will have more fun that way. They'll have an advantage in that state. Though, due to the curvature and the circular nature, it is still more possible for those who would prefer to get some distance to get away from that. Mausoleum is a medium or large, if you want to consider it large. I feel like it's more of a medium size. I consider it a medium legal dynamic stage. If it wasn't for the trampoline opening and being there, then this stage would be a medium legal open stage. As it is very much open, you can go wherever you want. It is a very good stage. Again, I cannot recommend this enough. This is a very good stage to learn how to play on. It is really good as it doesn't favor anything with a major advantage too often. So yeah, Mausoleum is going in the medium legal dynamic stage. Ramen Bowl is the home of Bin Bin. I mean Men Men. I mean, there's no difference if I'm being straight. Min Min belongs in the goddamn Bin Bin. Min Min is the character that made it into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Boo! My bias is not showing. This is genuinely how everyone feels. It's not just me. Totally. Totally not just me. Not a salty ninja main. Nope, nope, nope. Anyway, this stage is literally a bowl. The type that, you'd fill with ramen or soup. It's literally a bowl. It is a circular stage, and it is somewhat hard for me to classify it. I would say it is around a medium-sized stage. The gimmick here is that it is literally a bowl. Bowls are flat at the bottom, and then at the top it's a little different, you know, but it is a constant incline, you know, it holds liquid. So, yeah. With that being said, that means there's a constant elevation that is going on with the stage, as no two parts are, while it is perfectly symmetrical, if you are fighting up close, someone will have an elevation advantage over the other consistently. It also features a gong that can be hit that is in the background. Again, as I've stated before, this stage has a lot of elevation stuff that comes along with it that really and truly is what makes it a hard call. So, what is my conclusion on Ramen Bowl? Well, this one is difficult. This is probably the most difficult stage to me to classify because it screams legal. This stage screams that it should be legal. The only thing holding it back is its egregious elevation. If it wasn't for that, this stage would be absolutely one of the perfect stages. It'd probably be a really good neutral stage if I'm being honest. But for that reason, I can't just be like, oh yeah, this is awesome. So yeah, I have to think about this one, and I think Ramen Bowl falls into the category of a medium, open, potentially legal stage. We're gonna have to talk about the potentially legal aspect of it, but you could consider it legal. For argument's sake, we will consider this legal, but this stage is one of those where I find our stage list, I don't know how to put it. This is one of those ones. And I feel like as we get deeper in, I feel like my explanations will start to make a little bit more sense when it comes to when I say one of these ones where it's like, oh, it is so close to perfectly legal, but there's one thing that just, So yeah, that is Ramen Bowl. Scrapyard is the home of the fighter Mechanica, a fighter that does not carry the arms gene. Let me drop some lore on you in this stage video real quick. For those of you who don't know, the ability to stretch their arms the way they do for battle is caused by having the arms gene. You can identify this gene by the swirly eyes that the characters have. If you pay attention to Mechanica, you'll realize she does not have swirly eyes like that. Thus, she built a robot to emulate the gene to be able to participate in arms battle. How'd you like that lore drop? It's not just all stages here, right? Right. Anyway, let's get right into it. Scrapyard is literally a scrapyard. It features two destructible pillars near the center, each roughly the same distance away from the fighter's starting position. It also features a higher elevation area, which can be used to give a fighter a huge advantage when facing off against others. It has smaller ramps which lead up to the high area, and under the higher elevation level, you can even spot Mechanica's workshop where you can see one of her suits. So, with that being said, what is my conclusion on Scrapyard? Remember what I said about Ramen Bowl and how its legality was one of the hardest for me to decide because of its elevation? Well, Scrapyard is definitely giving it a run for its money. It has a similar issue, but not to the same extent. Scrapyard is a medium-sized stage and gives players of all types the ability to play on it. If you want to rush someone down, you can put them in a corner and do so. If you want to hit and run, you have ample space to do so. If you want to hide behind the pillars and use them to block attacks while sending curve arms around, you can do so. Scrapyard gives you so many different ways to play. If you want to run to try to get elevation advantage, you can do so. There's so many ways to just play on this stage, and it's one of those stages that is, I would say, is a bit more controversial compared to others because of the different strategies that could be employed on it. So, what's the issue? Well, that high elevation area is what we're talking about real quick. So, if you go to that high elevation area, you have a large advantage over the others. It is harder for the arms to hit you due to the level of the elevation they have to go, while yours are going down. Coming up is a different story. They can bonk at the bottom at near the top of the elevation area, meaning that it just flops. If someone tries to rush you from down there, the rush can literally bash against the bottom part of the high elevation area and just miss, just whiff. Like, it's hitting you, but it's like, let's say out of every 3 to 5 hits, you're gonna hit once or twice, maybe. So your rush damage is limited if you're doing it from there, and sometimes you have no choice but to try to start it. You know, you start it in the air, you do a jump, and then you land, and then the latter half of your rush just doesn't connect. Like, there's different parts to it. The only reason why this isn't like a detriment to the entirety of the stage is that on one side, or on both sides I could say, because it is, I consider it a semi-symmetrical stage. It's like not completely the same, but if you turn it to the side, it pretty much is the same. If you look at how the perspective of your starting positions, the stage seems symmetrical. I've been walking around it and such, and even then I'm not sure if I can link it or so. Maybe I need someone else to help me with that, but it feels symmetrical. And with that being said, the only thing about it that would hold it back is that large elevated area, but anyone can access that area. It's not like at one point if you try to run away, you are, you know, at a lower elevation or higher elevation because of that. If you want to get to the higher elevation area, you can go up the side. Obviously, the player at the higher elevation at the point in time might have an advantage and could try to prevent you from going upside, but it's very much their prerogative to get up there. You can get up there at the same time as them. That is on you if you decide to go up there or not. That is entirely player dependent. It is a choice whether you want to be there or not. And even then, sometimes the high ground ain't an advantage. It normally is, but sometimes it's not. So, with all of that being said, Scrapyard is a medium obstructive legal stage. Cinema Deux is the home of Twintel, the character that broke the internet on her reveal for her many assets. Cinema Deux is a cinema where there are 4 limos parked around it. The stage is actually symmetrical and is essentially the parking lot of the studio. It is curved with barricades to the sides to keep the fans away from the movie star and the action. The limos are indestructible, and when hit, arms will either bounce off of them or they will be completely stopped. Jumping on these limos can provide both an elevation advantage, and if you jump from being on top of one of these limos, it will give the trampoline-sized jumps as well. So, with that being said, what is my conclusion on Cinema Deux? Or Cinema Deux, because it's French for deux, deux, trois. Cinema Deux. I did French at one point in time. 2 points in time, actually. Anyway, that's beside the point. What is my conclusion? And being completely honest here, going into this, I fully expected this stage to have 0 legal merit. None. I was expecting this to be one of the few stages that I would go in and be like, oh, this is illegal, hands down, no questions asked. However, after some research, spending some time with it, I can say this stage does have an argument for legality. The stage is symmetrical. Its elevation mostly comes from the cars being there, and its obstacles, while they are, well, as obstructive as they are, because obstacles should be obstructive, they provide great jumping height, and they're not as problematic as I once believed. However, the cars are still very problematic, especially for characters like Ninjara who can't teleport past them, so they end up teleporting into the arms that they shielded. Ninjara's ability is that once it shields, instead of having a regular shield, he teleports. So I have been in situations where the car is there blocking my path for my teleport, and Min Min or some other character throws a curve on like a Chakram or a Ram Ram, and I teleport into the exact same Ram Ram I shielded. In other words, I still got hit even though I shielded, because the cars blocked the teleportation path. That is a thing that happens. It's very much a Ninjara thing, but that's not the only reason why I have an issue with these cars. Because the car's positioning if a character wants to run you down, put you in corners, this stage is very good for rush down characters to some degree, even though it is very large and benefits, you know, if I stay away from you, I use dragon, faraway arms, hit and run, it benefits you a lot. It's still very good at that. However, the stage has corners, and if a character is able to lock you down in a corner, it is actually very hard to escape from the corners in Cinema Deux, because when you try to escape, the cars are actually right near the corners, so you can end up putting yourself still in a position where now your opponent has an elevation advantage against you, because now they might have jumped on top of a car and you're still right there facing them off, and you can't even necessarily fight back as much as you would like to, because the cars, they block your arms, they obstruct it. Some arms, you know, you'll aim up and you'll hit, great. A lot of the arms you do that, they'll touch the car, they'll bounce away, they'll just be blocked entirely. There's so many things that these limos do that it is the main reason why I have to come to this conclusion. Because I cannot ignore how these cars can affect the gameplay and the levels to which it can introduce a lot of unfair elements into the play. Again, indestructible is another issue with that. If they weren't, the stage might not have been as problematic, but Cinema Deux is. Cinema Deux, let me do the French right. Cinema Deux, de toi, Cinema Deux, is a large, obstructive, illegal stage. It is definitely one I would put in a semi-legal category, but those cars, man, those cars. The limos hold this stage back from reaching its true potential. Ah, the beach. It's cool, calm, serene. Reminds me of home. Oh wait, cops? This is the cop stage? This is the cop buddy duo stage? This is Bite and Bark stage? Buster Beach? They trap people here? They catch them here? This is where they bust people, the Buster Beach? Oh boy, here we go. This is, as its namesake says, a beach featuring coconut trees in the background and even a lifeguard tower. This stage is actually shaped like Bite and Bark's signature arm, Tasiki, and thus, it can feel like two different stages mashed together into one at times. The top half of the missile-shaped stage features a platform in the middle of it that can be jumped on to provide slight elevation, and while it does have corners near the top, the wideness of the stage allows characters to easily escape these corner situations. On the other hand, the bottom part of the stage features a slight dip in elevation when coming from the top, and has two pockets. These two pockets are the corners which heavily trap characters in and allow those who want to play with massive corner pressure an outlet to do so. The size of this stage does allow for other playstyles, however. Due to how easy it is to end up in the bottom half, this stage favors those who prefer close range combat and corner pressure, such as Max Brass and the Springman. So, what is my conclusion on Buster Beach? This stage has always been very weird for me. This stage is pretty much, or at least at one point, it was considered the essential PS2 of ARMS. The stage where basically everyone's gonna end up starting on Buster Beach. It is the not so neutral stage that everyone ends up going to. It is not symmetrical, as it is literally shaped like a Siki, but symmetry, while important, isn't necessary for a stage to truly be legal. This stage provides ways for every single playstyle to thrive, even though it benefits one style far more than the others. It is an open stage that forces players to fight more dynamically than stick to specific game plans. However, while it is open at one part, it is also confined at others, making it kind of a mixture, kind of a hybrid stage. It is open yet confined. And thus, I have to say that Buster Beach is a large, open, yet somewhat confined legal stage. Snake Park, the home of the best non-DLC character in the entire game, as well as Ninjara's worst matchup, Kid Cobra. Snake Park is a skate park that is large and open. It features an outer ring that is slightly above the large interior skate park of the stage. Next to the starting pots inside the park are 2 skateboards, Beyblades. Worst thing about this stage? All of the above. The skate park itself is filled with bumps that can cause slight elevation, but not to the extent where it can be problematic. So, what is my conclusion when it comes to Snake Park? Well, let me put it like this. Snake Park was the first stage that the developers removed from ranked mode. Yes, that's right. The devs removed this stage from ranked. I feel like that alone should be enough of a reason to tell you, but I'm sure that's not why you're here. You want me to go in depth as to why this stage that you've seen displayed, how is it so bad? How is this stage so awful? Why is it so bad that the devs themselves had to step in and say, nah, this stage can't pop up in ranked no more? What about it? What about it is the issue? Well, it's easy. It's Beyblade! Beyblade! Or boards, whatever you want to call them. It's the Beyblades. The boards literally change the characteristics of how the game is played. It is incredibly hard to hit opponents on them, as jumping while on the skates causes them to jump. Arms literally hit the bottom of the boards. You are swinging wildly, or maybe even trying to hit your opponent. If you're both on the board, you're both constantly in motion, making your arms homing virtually useless. On top of that, if someone jumps, your arms actually are on target for once, actually on the boards, because again, your homing is virtually useless. It hits the bottom of the board and you don't get any damage. It is incredibly hard to hit someone on the board. It is incredibly hard to get them off the board if you are not on a board themselves to try to get them off. This stage just reeks of, hey, this stage is for fun. Nothing here should be taken seriously. If you want to play this stage seriously, you leave the boards behind. Otherwise, then that, yeah. In fact, just to throw it back real quick, all the way back in time, when Snake Park popped up in ranked, it was widely agreed upon in the community to, hey, if this shows up, we ignore the boards, we leave them where they are, and we fight mano a mano inside the actual park, which would actually be a cool stage with a wide open. It would be one of the best stages in general in this game if it wasn't for those goddamn blades. And we can't turn them off. We can't remove them. This isn't Smash, this is a hazards off button. We're stuck with those things. So yeah, all of that to say, I've literally been to the point where I've spent an entire round, like me and my opponent were actively trying to hit each other. They're not shielding. I'm not shielding. I mean, I'm not shielding. I'm Ninjara in general, but we're just swinging on each other and we can't connect. Even when you do jumps and all the other stuff, let me try to jump grab, get them off the skateboard, something like that. Even then, it can still be easily blocked. This stage just, this stage. It brings emotions in. So, yeah. Snake Park is a symmetrical, large, open, very, very, very illegal stage. And you know who to blame? Them goddamn Beyblades, them goddamn boards. Oh my god, bruh. Put it in the illegal bin. DNA Lab, the home of Helix, aka DNA Man. Fun fact, I actually wanted Helix to be my secondary when this game was first dropping. But, you know me, best Ninjara NA? Yep. Yeah, I decided to just solo main Ninjara. I was always going to main Ninjara, Helix was going to be my secondary. Green for life, I guess. But, Ninjara was so much fun. And Helix was weird to control. Still feels weird to control. Like, he's great. He's a great character, don't get me wrong, but oh my god. I could not. He's not beginner friendly. And I just decided, you know what? Ninjara's cool, Ninjara's fun. I'm gonna stick with Ninjara. So, DNA Lab. Yeah, DNA Lab. My favorite stage. DNA Lab is a medium-sized rectangular stage that features two distinct elevation levels. The middle of the stage, where the fighters start, is of a lower elevation. There is a slight ramp on both sides that leads to an upper elevation area. On these upper elevation areas, there are three tubes which contain helix-like creatures, which are most likely prototypes of what would eventually be Helix, or of the helix-like creatures we see when we're in practice lobbies. These tubes can be used to hide behind, block attacks, can also be used to send curve arms around to hit from blind spots. These tubes are breakable and will remain shattered during the future rounds in the same game. So, what is my conclusion on DNA Lab? This stage is very close to what I would say is the quintessential neutral stage. It is not large, but the pillars allow for players who favor distance arms to avoid getting caught. It favors ways to use curved arms to their strengths, and still has corners and enough places to apply pressure so that characters that love to be close range, those close range combos, they're not lacking for anything when it comes to this. They all have the ability to get your strengths off. It is a very close to perfectly neutral stage. It also gives characters like Bin Bin, Max Brass, and Springtron the ability to quickly obtain their powered up states by hiding behind the pillars until they are fully charged. There are so many strategies that can be employed, such as spinning around breaking all the tubes, or just using tubes to sneak curved arms around, or even using curved arms to go around the tubes and hit opponents hiding behind them. The slight elevation to the stage can throw things off and make certain moves and grabs kind of awkward, but other than that, this stage is honestly perfect. I love this stage. I already said it before, this is my favorite stage. It allows for so much. It is one of the most technical stages. It is one of the most... It's just one of the best stages in the game. Like, without a doubt. Without a doubt. There's not a shadow of doubt here. DNA Lab is a symmetrical, medium, obstructive, legal stage. The best stage in the game for me personally. If you fight me in tournament in the future, you can always take me here. In fact, I recommend you do. You heard me. It's basically, like legal. It's basically neutral all the way through. Don't worry about the fact that it's my favorite stage. Don't worry about the fact that Chakram is my favorite arm. You don't need to worry about any of that. A curved arm on a stage that loves curved arms, don't worry about it. Forget about it. Just take me there. Take me to DNA Lab. Trust me, you won't regret it. And if you do regret it, well, why'd you believe me in the first place? Why would you take me here? Oh, God, I love this stage. Legal stage, baby! I love DNA Lab. Sky Arena, the home of the original final boss of the game and the first DLC character that dropped Max Brass. Sky Arena is a rectangular shaped arena with the middle being a ring that is slightly elevated with the outer layer that is lower in elevation. The stage has belts acting as ropes on the side. You can also see skyscrapers and other buildings as well from this stage, as well as the sunset while you are fighting on this stage. So, what is my conclusion in Sky Arena? Well, I view Sky Arena as a second Spring Stadium, which is actually somewhat in theme. In the early days of ARMS, we speculated that Max Brass was Springman's dad. Their abilities are extremely similar, and even their stages have the same shape, with the main difference being Spring Stadium having springs, well, the trampolines on the side, whereas on Sky Arena it just has a lower elevation area where those trampolines would be. This, however, does provide an even bigger advantage to those close range fighters than on Spring Stadium. And if you're cornered now, you now have to worry about the fact that you're also at a lower elevation, which makes it much easier for these close range fighters to keep you trapped, especially because they can just be at the higher elevation. Meaning, if you try to jump, they can jump and always beat on your jump by getting more height. Like, it's just a bad spot to be in, and even without having to corner you, if someone is fighting at a medium range and you are in the corner, you are in that lower area, you're still at a disadvantage, as now they have the advantage with their arms coming at you. You jump, try to even it up with them. You don't have to deal with landing lag. And the only way to get back on top of the stage, on top of the ring, is to jump. Meaning you have to deal with ending lag and a very predictable, well, you're going to try to want to reset to neutral, so why would I let you reset to neutral? So you just keep them in the bottom. It's something that can just lead to so much damage before you can actually reset to neutral, that by the time you reset it to neutral, the match might as well be over sometimes. So that is one thing that you have to consider when it comes to Sky Arena. This stage also has the issue of always happening during sunset. That sun that I mentioned, yeah, it is blinding for a lot of players. Like, you're playing and then you just see it out of the corner of your eye, it's right on your screen, it's blinding, it makes it hard to keep track of your opponent's arms if you're not really truly able to. It can be a very painful experience with that. So that is something else about Sky Arena that actually really sucks. However, just like Spring Stadium, Sky Arena is a small, confined, legal stage. Though, if I personally had to choose between it and Spring Stadium, I would always choose Spring Stadium. The glare, the fact that I like to be mobile and not be stuck or confined in a corner, the fact that this literal lower elevation area is so easy to trap me in that it doesn't matter if you're a ranged fighter or a close range fighter. If you put me in there, it's gonna lead to so much pain. Yeah, no, this stage is not it for fighters like me. However, it is definitely still falling in the realm of legal. Via Dolce, the home of Lollipop, and the introduction of the worst arm type and arms in my opinion. Lollipop's default arms are problematic, all three of them, and they have all left many brutal marks on the meta. But we're not here to talk about how Lollipop shifted the entire meta. We're here to talk about Via Dolce. Via Dolce is a small, medium, it's more like it's long. It's small, it's not a very wide stage, but it is a long stage. That's the best way to put it. I don't know if I could wrap that into small or medium. That it screams more small than medium, but it's very long. So that's how I describe it. I'd say it's a small stage more than it is a medium stage, but it's long. Anyway, this is a long, small stage that has many sweet shops and cafes on the side, and arms can actually go through it. Other than that, there really isn't anything special about this stage or anything large about it. It is just literally a street with cafes on the side, and arms can fly through those cafes without being blocked. That's basically it. So, what is my conclusion on Via Dolce? Well, I hate this stage. This is my least favorite stage in this game by far. I consider this to be the worst stage for my playstyle whatsoever. I will auto-ban this stage and you will never ever have me play on this outside of a fun arena. Because I auto-ban this stage. I would never do randoms and arms because this stage exists. But does me hating this stage make it illegal? No. Via Dolce is taking what makes Spring Stadium really good for the Max Brasses, the Springmans, the Kid Cobras, a lot of those people who just want to be in your face, and just takes it to the extreme. This stage is corners. Every step of the way is corners. Your arms can go through those shops. You can't. You're in a corner. You move slightly, you're still in a corner. This stage is just corner here, corner here, corner there, corner there, corner every goddamn where. It's corners the stage. Oh my god, who decided this one, bro? Corner here, corner everywhere. Corner all the way. Yeah, all of that to say is this stage is just made up of consistent corners. Regardless of if you're in the middle, you're on one of the ends, you are always in a corner. This is literally the stage where any opponent who loves to corner you is salivating at the chance to take you here. And if you let them take you here, 20 seconds is all it's going to take for them to take your 1000 HP and reduce it to 0. This is a stage where as soon as you get you in a corner, which you're always in a corner, you're going to get belt to ass. Okay? You're gonna get your ass beat. Don't do it to yourself unless you're the one who's playing the Springman, or the Max Brass, or the Min, or the Cobra. You can come here, we're just gonna have a brawl session. You gonna fight it out. There's no escape. Whether you're in advantage state or not, it's corner after corner after corner. And yes, there's very slight elevation, but that doesn't even matter on this stage. You're in a corner here, you're in a corner there. Let's just fight. That's what this stage is all about. Let's get down to business. It's time to fight. And there's nothing you can do. No escape, no trickery. Don't try to blast me from distance. You ain't getting the chance. We going and we fighting. That's it. That's Via Dolce. That's Via Dolce. There's no gimmick here besides the fact that you're all in a corner. You're just stuck. You have no escape. It's you and the Max Brass he's salivating. He's here like, yes, I'm happy you took me here. Yeah, there's no reprieve. There's no reprieve. So, with all that being said, Via Dolce is a symmetrical, confined, small but long legal stage. If you want to play the distance game, even medium-sized distance game at all, and you have no intention of being right up in your opponent's face, ban this stage immediately. This is not for you. This is for people who have come to do one thing: cheese their opponent, dominate their opponent. If you're not thinking about dominating your opponent, putting them in a corner, and beating their all the way into next week, you're on the wrong stage. Temple Grounds, the home of Misango, the fighter who has a spirit that can change his stats from being okay to very fast but low girth, very heavy with high girth, or being even immune to rush damage while rushing, or just building up rush faster. Temple Grounds itself is a sacred grounds for the Misangan people and features a large statue in the background as well as stone pillars of the same figure and blue frames around the side of the arena. It, like most temples, has stairs in the area where fighters do battle and is such on a slope the entire time. However, if you turn the stage to the side, you'd realize that it is entirely symmetrical from the side. Similar to DNA Lab, the pillars in this arena are breakable and can be used for very similar things as you would in DNA Lab. Once broken, these pillars do not respawn for any subsequent rounds during the same game. So, what is my conclusion on Temple Grounds? Well, I think Temple Grounds is a stage that is very similar to DNA Lab, yet different in many ways. The elevation on this stage is very noticeable and is something to constantly be aware of. It may not be very long, but it is a very wide stage, allowing for players that like to fight at a distance to get adequate distance for long-range fights. But it still has corners where close-range fighters can trap opponents. This stage does offer more space than DNA Lab, thus it benefits fighters who want space, long-range combat a little bit more, as well as charge fighters who want to get a little bit of space to open up to power up themselves, such as Max Brass. Its closest comparison is obviously DNA Lab, but I think DNA Lab is more neutral than Temple Grounds is. And I think Temple Grounds, even with less pillars, benefits long-ranged arm users more than DNA Lab. Therefore, after listening to this and playing on the stage and experiencing it a bit, I feel like Temple Grounds is a symmetrical, large, obstructed stage. The fact that it is so big allows for players who want to play at larger distances having a larger advantage on it. However, it still is possible to lock you down in a corner. While there aren't that many corners and escape is definitely a lot easier on this stage, so it does benefit you if you get a grab and you get your short range opponent off of you. It can be very beneficial to keep them out. Dragon arms are very strong here, anything that just keeps your opponent out, even something like a Hydra, a Biffler, these things go really hard on this stage. Just anything that you want to keep your opponent at a distance, that stay away from me, keep away from me, and it just works out really, really well on this stage. So, if you want to run distance, you probably want this stage. Sparring Ring is the home of Springtron. At least it became the home of Springtron. Originally, this stage was not accessible for us to play, and neither was Springtron at a point. He would invade your Grand Prix runs and be a difficult opponent that you could defeat to earn a badge. As for Sparring Arena, or Sparring Ring, the devs heard the player base wanting to play on this stage, thus they released it, giving us our 14th stage and our 14th fighter. Sparring Ring is the third Spring Stadium in the game, featuring the exact same square build. The main difference here is that instead of the extra room of lower area on Sky Arena or the trampoline area on Spring Stadium, there's none of that. It's just ropes blocking you off. That's it. You get that flat square thing, that's it. We scrap it. This stage is a simple square. No gimmicks, no obstacles. It's just pure fighting. So, what is my conclusion on Sparring Ring? Well, this is basically your final destination of ARMS, if I'm going to be honest. It really is your final destination of ARMS. And just like before, I've said it once, I've said it twice at this point, this is the third Spring Stadium, which means it benefits the same characters that love to be up close and personal. It is small, it is confined, there's nowhere to run. You're scrapping the entire time. It's very easy to lock your opponent in a corner. It has 4 corners, it is a small stage. You get knocked, you get grabbed from max brass, you go flying from one corner to the next. There's no escape here. You're literally fighting for your life in this arena. Whether you're fighting against a Min, a Springtron, a Springman, a Max Brass, a Kid Cobra, these characters that just love to be in your face, you're fighting for your life. That is what Spring Stadium is. So, with that being said, it is just another Sparring Ring, which means it is, yes, Sparring Ring is a symmetrical, small, confined, legal stage. There isn't much else to really say about this stage. It's literally just, y'all want the Sparring Ring? Here you go. And then we got it. And then we added it to the rule set. And my God, I remember when we used to just, let's just go to Sparring Ring. You know, Sparring is the most fierce stage. Let's just go to Sparring Ring. And then you start to realize, wait a minute, this stage kind of benefits those characters a bit. I don't know about that one now. But yeah, on to the final stage in ARMS. Name Redacted is the home of the true final boss of ARMS, the creator of Springtron, Helix, and Headlock, and also Max Brass's X, which is heavily implied. This is heavily implied that this is Max Brass's X. His scorned ex, cause he said something or did something to her to absolutely piss her off and send her down the loopy hole. Dr. Coyle! And let me tell you, she is by far the best character in this game. She's the best DLC in this game. She literally is the best character because she floats. She also gets extra arms on charge. She is really strong. She's really broken. However, her lab name Redacted is a different story altogether. This stage is a lab with tubes on the side that fans end up standing on. There's a monitor on the screen that shows Springman and also how Springtron was modeled off of Springman. There's also a conveyor belt in the middle, and above it are green unbreakable tubes that flow with the conveyor belt. It has slight elevation as there are stairs on the side to go down, and there's just a lot happening in this stage. So, what is my conclusion on Name Redacted? Well, there's too much happening on this stage. I can just say without it, there's way too much happening on this stage. We have a small, confined stage, and we have even less space to work with because there's a conveyor belt filled with green tubes above it, and if you land on that conveyor belt or walk on the conveyor belt, it's moving. It's a conveyor belt. It's moving. You lose positioning with that. These unbreakable tubes also block your arms, they construct, they obstruct you. There's a lot happening all at once. There's still some slight elevation to deal with along with that. It's just too many things happening. There's nowhere for you to get an actual serious fight where you're fighting so hard against the stage just to actually get to fight. So, it is very clear that this stage is not fit in any way, shape, or form for competitive play. And so, name Redacted is a symmetrical, small, dynamic, illegal stage. And with that, we have now reached to the end of the first segment of this video. That is the stages, getting to know them, getting intricate with them, getting to understand the stages in and out to some degree in a competitive mindset. And now, before we get to the very important part, which is basically going over the original Backroom stage list and then going over the new Backroom stage list, and then eventually, ending the video with my own, potentially, what was our best stage list be, and seeing how right they got it, how wrong they got it, all that stuff like that based off of the research I've done. We have to talk about stage theory and characters and how they play into stage theory before we get into rating these characters. So, let's get into it. Stage theory. When we talk about stage theorem, we first have to talk about the characters and the arms and what playstyles are to be expected when it comes to the game. Stage theorem means that we choose the best stages that account for every playstyle and try to create the most balanced stage list so that regardless of who is playing, no one feels like they are locked into a bad situation. Everyone feels like, oh, regardless of whether I have a counter pick or an actual pick, I am good. Stage theorem basically is just finding the most balanced stage list possible. So we have to go from that point. And for you to find a balanced stage list, you have to understand how the characters play, and in the case of arms, how the arms work, what kind of playstyles come of them, and that's what makes it very important. When we look at it from this point of view, we have to come to a very simple conclusion, or at least I come to a very simple conclusion. There are three playstyles that most players will fall on. These are close range playstyle, mid-range playstyle, and a long-range playstyle. The stage list has to account for these three main playstyles. Now, for people who are going to be in the comments, and also for others who are like, oh, there's more than that. Yes, there's more to arms than whether you're playing long range, short range, or mid-range. However, those are the three main things that will really help balance the stage list. And at the end of the day, most of us are playing with these three ranges at the end of the day. These are the overarching things for the playstyles. So these overarching styles, and then there's a bunch of little other differences in between, different mini styles that incorporate some or both or more. I'm saying a lot of words, but just as all of that to say, yes, there's more than three playstyles. However, these are the three main playstyles that you will run into, and all other playstyles to some degree fall under these categories. So that means our stage list has to account for these three types and balance for them. For that, I have divided the legal stages into 5 categories to make things easier and to try to find the perfect balance between stages. These are close range, close or mid-range stages. These are stages that are dabbling in mid-range but can still be fought in a close range capacity. They're very close, but they're not exactly mid-range, but they're not exactly close. They're right in between. Then there's mid-range, which is actual mid-range. Then there's mid or far range. Again, these are closer to far range, but they also dabble in mid-range. These are bigger stages. They tend to either be mid-range at times, far range at others. They favor that style. And then there's far range. Now that I've explained what these 5 categories are, let's actually show the stages and go over them. For close range, we have Spring Stadium 2, I mean Sky Arena, Via Dolce, and Spring Stadium 3, I mean Sparring Ring. For close or mid-range, we have Buster Beach and Ramen Bowl. For mid-range, we have Scrapyard and DNA Lab. For mid or far range, we have Mausoleum and Temple Grounds. Now, Mausoleum is a very interesting one, simply because when the trampoline is not open, Mausoleum is actually like the perfect mid-range stage. I've said this once, I've said this twice, this stage is very, very good. However, once the trampoline opens, it's more or less a far range stage, and yes, even on far range stages, once a person who is very good at getting in gets it, you are in trouble. Close range is very strong in this game. However, you have an easier time keeping someone out on Mauso, so that is why it also turns to go towards the far range. It doesn't mean that you can't get close, it just means that getting close is harder. And for far range, you have Ramen Ring, the only far range stage. Now, as you can see, there are way more close range options in general than there are far range options. However, that should mostly be fine because of how obstructed stages tend to favor ranged users by giving them more places to hide and the ability to run away more. Now, the most important part about stage theorem is trying to give each type of playstyle some fairness when it comes to the game. For example, when a far range player and a close range player are to meet in a set, they're supposed to have a nice, good set. The far range player obviously wants to keep the close range player out. The close range player wants to close that gap. That means when the stages are being banned, the close range player is going to be like, nah, get these far range stages out of here. I want to be able to approach. And the far range player is going to be like, no, I'm not trying to get boxed in a corner. I'm not trying to deal with that. Get these close range stages out of my face. That leaves mid-range stages. Close range players on mid-range stages can close the gap, though it is a little bit more difficult than on a close range stage where they're basically already in your face. A long range player still has the ability to keep this close range player out and play to the advantage. No one has an overwhelming advantage and no one has an overwhelming disadvantage. Basically, it is who plays better wins. It is fair. And that is what we are trying to accomplish here. When a close range player and a close range player fight, they'll do whatever they want. When a long range player and a long range player fight, they'll do whatever they want. When mid range player fight, you see, depending on how they lean on the mid range scale, whether they fight more as a close range mid range or a far range mid range. There's a lot of different ways this can go about it, but the stage list should be set up in a way where whatever you favor or whatever you hate shouldn't lock you down. There should be enough variety and enough stages so that if you ban certain stages, yes, you might end up in a situation that is negative for you, but it shouldn't be deeply negative for you. That is how these counter picks should be. Yes, your opponent still has a slight advantage because of the counter pick. However, they shouldn't have an overwhelming advantage because you just ran out of bans, or because there's too many stages, or something like that. The most important part about this is balance. Balance is key. Balance is everything. And as I stated before, stage theorem is all about balance, and that comes from the characters, the arms, and which stages support or hurt or help all of these playstyles and all of these factors. So now that we've explained stage theorem and what makes it important and how balance is the key and how we want to keep everything as balanced as possible, let's start off by evaluating the original Backroom stage list. The original Backroom stage list. My beloved. Oh, how I miss thee. Yeah, I like the stage list. I actually legitimately like the stage list, but I did have my gripes with it. So let's see if my gripes were fathomed, if I had a reason to have my gripes, or if, maybe I was bellyaching a bit too much for no reason. Who knows, maybe this is a good stage list, like a legitimate good stage list, or maybe the new Backroom stage list is better. But we won't find out until we evaluate, so let's get right into that. The starter stages for the original Backroom stage list were Mausoleum, Buster Beach, DNA Lab, Temple Grounds, and Sparring Ring. The counterpick stages were Via Dolce and Scrapyard. Looking at the starter stages, there was one close range stage, one close or mid-range stage, one mid-range stage, and two mid or far range stages. Honestly, a really good starting set. Then we added another close range stage with Via Dolce and another mid-range stage with Scrapyard. Honestly, a very well thought out stage list. It's actually a lot better than I thought when I was originally making this video. As I recall being forced into stages I'd rather not play, but those stages were still very winnable, even if they favored my opponent a little bit more. Now, this starting stage list would tend to land on DNA Lab and Buster Beach most frequently, which matches our stage theorem. That is, that those are the two most neutral stages out of the starting stage list. From there, depending on the playstyles of the players involved, all stages were chosen fairly frequently, with Scrapyard being the least picked. I'd wager this was because of the elevation differences. Looking at this stage list, while it is good, it isn't the perfect ARMS stage list. In fact, there is one glaring issue that this stage list has, and its name is Buster Beach! Buster Beach may seem to be neutral, but unlike DNA Lab, which is far more neutral, Buster Beach tends to favor close-range fighters, which tends to force players that prefer mid-range or far-range fights to have to play on that stage when they would rather not. Case in point, I would be playing on Buster Beach very often, and I really wish you'd stop forcing me to go to Buster. Please, stop it. Stop it. Why would you do this to me? But yeah, they basically force you to play on Buster a lot more often. Sure, it is better than other close range stages, being, you know, the Sparring Ring and oh my god, the Via Dolce. Oh god, the Via Dolce. But it doesn't help that you can still get rolled on it with only 2 bans. An easy fix for this would be to add a 3rd ban. That way, 3 more offensive stages can be banned, and 3 more defensive stages can also be banned, leaving those on opposite ends to fight on more neutral terms than the further range fighters having to deal with the stage list that is unfortunately tilted in the favor of close range fighters. However, I still think this stage list is entirely viable, and I really do prefer this stage list to our current backroom set. It isn't perfect, but I feel like it is pretty close to it. So all that to say, this one gets a passing grade. I think it is not the worst stage list. I think it's very good. It matches the theorem to a very good degree. It does have a glaring issue being that it can be one-sided. The best way to describe this is, I don't know why I have to deal with Sparring and Via being my bans, because I will always ban those ones, forcing me to Buster Beach every single time. Which, to be fair, it's not bad. It's not bad. Like, in all fairness, it's not the worst because Buster Beach is still technically a neutral stage, but oh my god, do I not want to play on Buster Beach. I get it. It is a stage where I have a disadvantage that I need to win on to, get my counter pick advantage, assuming everything. But that stage, man, that stage. But it's still fair. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have Scrapyard, where a lot of people ain't trying to ban on. You have Temple Grounds, which is also going to get banned. And you also have DNA Lab. But honestly, no one really minds DNA Lab. So in that case, as a ranged fighter, this is why I said it's tilted more in the close range fight. If I'm forced as a ranged fighter to be in a position where I have no choice, like I have no bans, I have no real bans. Sparring has to go, and Via Dolce has to go. That means my opponent's gonna be like, alright, we're going Buster Beach every single time, and every single time they're going to be forcing me to go to Buster Beach. On the other hand, I'm like, if the close range player is like, oh yeah, well, I'm not going Scrapyard, you can screw off with that, and I'm not going Temple, well, DNA. You can also go Mausoleum, obviously, but more than likely you're going to end up on DNA Lab. And these stages are not as favored as Buster Beach. So it's not like overwhelmingly close range centered or close range favored, but it is still close range favored. Now, while in the middle of making this video, someone actually gave me the European backroom stage list. So, let's look at that next. Now, the EU stage list is very similar to the NA stage list, with the only difference being that Ninja College replaces Scrapyard. In terms of distance and being better for long-range fighters in some capacity, I can understand the change. However, the stage itself, as I've already discussed, didn't pass the legality test. So while I understand how controversial Scrapyard is as a stage, I can't say this stage list is good due to Ninja College's inclusion. Overall, it is not a bad stage list, it's just not as good as any stage list. Though, I do admire the unique approach to fixing the issues of players not liking Scrapyard, but at the end of the day, Ninja College is not a stage I would ever include in a stage list. I love Ninjara. His stage is just not it. I've spoken at length about why Ninja College isn't it. So while this does fix issues of, no one's gonna, like a lot of people weren't choosing Scrapyard as I stated before, it still comes to the simple conclusion of, yeah, we have a stage that is dedicated to range, but at the same time there's the elevation issues, the fact that, you can keep them out, but really can you? Because that stage is very linear. So, yeah, I don't know how else to put it. It's not a great stage list. Because there's one glaring flaw, Ninja College is a very big glaring flaw. So, now, the moment you've been waiting for. Let's finally get to the main event. Or at least for some people, because we gotta talk about that new backroom stage list for real. We need to talk about that. So now, we have arrived at the final stage list to evaluate, which is the current stage list. The starting stage list is Ramen Ring, Mausoleum, Buster Beach, DNA Lab, and Sparring Ring. The counterpick stages are Spring Stadium, Ramen Bowl, Scrapyard, Sky Arena, Via Dolce, and Temple Grounds. That is 11 stages to choose from out of a total of 15 stages in the entire game. That is a lot! I'd argue far too many stages, especially since we're only given 3 bands with DSR for best of 3, or modified DSR for best of 5. For the starting stages, we have 1 long range, 3 mid range, 1 close range. Honestly, really good starting set. I'm gonna be real honest. Like, give Jacket, give it its due. That is a really, really good starting list. But now we have to look at counter picks. And if I want to avoid close quarter stages, after winning Game 2 on Mausoleum or Buster Beach, I have to ban Sparring Ring, and Sky Arena, and Spring Stadium, and Via Dolce, but I only got 3 bans. In other words, I am not playing on a stage that is just a slight disadvantage. I am forced to play on a stage that is a heavy disadvantage. So which one of these stages do I really not want to touch? And does my opponent realize that they just have this overwhelming advantage? Because with all of these stages, as I've stated before, we have a very large contingency of close range stages. So yeah, this stage list is very heavily in the favor of the close range players. And to further emphasize this point, if I prefer close range stages, I can ban Ramen Ring, Temple Grounds, and Scrapyard. My opponent's counterpick stages aren't anywhere near as advantageous as me, because, oh wow, Mausoleum, that's a fairly neutral stage. DNA Lab, I can still corner you, that's not that hard. These stages are conditional as to when the further range fighter will have an advantage. All I have to do, if I'm fighting on Mausoleum, is avoid destroying the trampoline. If I'm on DNA Lab, I can spend an entire turn destroying all of the tubes, and then all I have to do is that, oh, no tubes in the way, I can get up close and personal, and let's fight, buddy. Let's fight. In other words, with so many stages, and with the majority of the stages in the game in general being geared towards mid or close range fighting, by having all these stages active, you just make this game more inclined for close range fighters. People who want to play out of range are just out of luck. Like, this stages is too crowded. There aren't enough bands to get rid of the bad stages, and I'm putting bad in quotes, and there aren't enough bands to prevent close combat fighters from dominating in the long run. In other words, this stage list leans too heavily on one side. This stage list is not good. I've said it once, I've said it twice. After the starting set, after game 1, everything is down the drain if you want to play at a far range, or if you even want to play at a mid-range to some degree, and this person wants to keep it a close range. A close range fighter has an overwhelming advantage here, and that is why this stage list does not work that well. It goes heavily against stage theorem. It is too lopsided. This does not get a passing grade. I already said it. I knew this was the conclusion I would have come to even before I started, and this is literally what I said. I don't think I'm going to come to a conclusion where this stage list is better than the original one. and I don't think this Stages is that good. And I was right. Obviously, I am biased. I am very biased in my assessment to some degree, but I took the time out, I researched, and this stage has an overcrowding problem. The Stages doesn't acknowledge the fact that ARMS has way too many close range favored stages, and if you have all of them active, you can't get rid of them all. And even if you have the ability to get rid of them all via bans, you're still not going to be in a good position as a far range fighter, because now, because there's less of those stages, you can absolutely wipe them out, forcing them on a situation where, oh well, you have to fight something where my trying to get in your face ass is going to be in your face. So yeah, that is it. This stage list, I'm sorry to say it, but yeah, it's not good. I know there are arguments for it. I've seen people make arguments for it. It's too crowded. It's too one-sided. It doesn't work. It doesn't give balance. And a stage list should always favor balance over everything else. So yeah. This one doesn't do it. This ain't it. So now that we've done that, it's time for the fun part. Let's see if we can design our own perfect stage list. Now, for our perfect stage list, we have to remember that fairness between the two opposing sides so that no specific playstyle has an innate advantage over another is the goal. The first thing to consider are spring stadiums. All of the spring stadiums. These are our innate close range stages. They all have advantages for close range fighters, but we don't want it to be overwhelming. So out of these, I think that makes Spring Stadium the correct choice. We then need to choose our mid-range stage that favors close range slightly, but is as close to even as possible. That is either one of Ramen Bowl or Buster Beach. The elevation on Ramen Bowl can make things incredibly awkward, and Buster Beach has pockets which are very heavily favored the close range fighter. So yeah, both of these stages have their flaws, but I think elevation can be a bigger issue than the pockets. So for this slot, for our starting stages, I think Buster Beach is the correct choice. Alright, let's look at our neutral stage. This stage shouldn't favor any particular playstyle and is supposed to be the fairest stage of them all, where players can thrive and it doesn't overly favor far range or short range. I think the answer here is probably DNA Lab. It allows for everything I just stated. It's really good for short range and long range. It may give an extra edge to some curve arm users, but they do well on most stages anyway. So yeah. Next, we need another neutral stage that maybe slightly favors more long range players, and I think the answer to this is actually Mausoleum. At this stage, if the middle breaks, makes it incredibly hard for players to approach and gives range players an advantage with their keep away game. Finally, the final stage would have to be Ribbon Ring as the only large stage. Now, I'm gonna be real honest with y'all. I am not a fan of this stage, but it is by far the largest open stage, and by using the blocks to their advantage, far range players can keep players that want to get close away, and it is very hard to corner someone on the stage, especially if they keep moving further away and around, thus making it an optimal stage for far away play. It does have downsides with the elevation and blocks potentially hindering movement, but the long range players shouldn't be deep inside the blocks to begin with. So, for our hopefully perfect stage list, we have our starting set. That is Spring Stadium, Buster Beach, DNA Lab, Mausoleum, and Ribbon Ring. But wait a minute, Mr. Uran! Isn't that the exact same stage list as our current backroom set? What are you saying? Again, the issue with that stage list isn't the starters. It's the fact that there are far too many stages that are legal. Now we have to look at our counter picks, and we have two ways that we can go about this. We can choose to have 8 stages legal or 7 stages legal. One of these will have 2 bans and the other will feature 3 bans. First, let's see if we can make 7 stages work. In this case, we want to go to the extremes and choose a stage that is close range and choose a stage that is far range. For far range, the only option is Temple Grounds, and for close range, We want variety, so we have the two versions of Spring Stadium and Via Dolce. So obviously we're going with Via Dolce. With two bans, far range players will ban Spring Stadium and Via Dolce and most likely be taken to a stage they can win on but favors close range like Buster Beach. On the other hand, close range fighters would ban Temple Grounds and Ribbon Ring and would be taken to a stage that slightly favors range fighters like Mausoleum, or they would be taken to a true neutral stage of DNA Lab. Unfortunately, this still favors close range players a bit, as Buster Beach is more for close range than Mausoleum is for far range. Adding Scrapyard as an 8th stage and giving 3 bans allows Via Dolce, Buster Beach, and Sparring Ring to be banned, forcing DNA Lab to be the best option at a neutral stage for the close range to choose. However, on the other side, close range would ban Ribbon Ring, Temple, and Scrapyard. This feels more fair as DNA Lab and Mazo can both be good for close combatants as well. And while it may seem on paper that it favors far range players, it actually has enough variety to where all players have decent options. So, my conclusion is 8 stages with the starters being Spring Stadium, Buster Beach, DNA Lab, Mausoleum, and Ribbon Ring, and the counter picks being Via Dolce, Temple Ground, Scrapyard is the best possible stage list for ARMS. It favors everything. It gets rid of the very big issue that the original Backroom had, which was Buster Beach. I've said it before, yes, you should be able to win on Buster Beach, but I've said it before, it is very much a stage that favors close range, and it is not as neutral as you need to be. Like, winning on this stage as a mid-range, and even worse, a far-range fighter is so difficult. You have to work so much harder than your opponent, and it is very much like, the best way to put it is you're more than likely going to put yourself in that pocket, trying to avoid your opponent, and then your opponent's going to capitalize off of it. It's very unfortunate. So that is my reasoning for having that stage be bannable, leading to something more neutral, like DNA Lab or a Mausoleum. And yes, it kind of favors my favorite stage, DNA Lab, a bit, but I feel like it is still better than being forced onto Buster Beach. But I can see the argument otherwise. I'll be honest and I'll be fair, I can see the argument otherwise, as a counterpick shouldn't be completely fair. It should be favored to the counterpicker's advantage some way, shape, or form. So yeah, that is also something to consider. But yeah, that is probably going to do it. I want to thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my little stage theorem. I don't think there is a perfect competitive stage list for ARMS. However, I do think the stages I managed to come up with is possibly the best one based on both stage theorem and my experience. Happy 9th birthday, ARMS! And I'll see everyone in the next one. Because, oh, 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 happy birthday, ARMS! Alright, y'all. Peace out.